everyone. University of the West of England, Bristol and MSM welcomes you to the MSM Agent eSummit 2020 Live. These are extremely unprecedented times and things are rapidly changing in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. But this too shall pass, and it is always better to be optimistic about the future and hope for a better tomorrow, rather than dwell on what's going wrong. Before we go live, let me take you to the basic features of the Zoom webinar. Please note that this is a live session and your video and your mic will be inactive during this webinar session. On your screen, there are multiple options on the control panel. Use the raise hand option to participate in the webinar. If you have any questions related to the university, you can use the Q&A section to type in your questions. If you face any technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the chat box option to key in your concerns. If for some reasons your questions are not answered during the webinar, an email will be sent out to you with detailed answers. Now let me take you to the main part of the session. This session will be conducted by International Director, Asia Pacific, Mr. Ray Priest, one of the eminent personalities and UK's leading educationalist. He has committed most of his working life to make Bristol a city that can be proud of its educational system. I now request Mr. Ray Priest to give you an insight about the University of the West of England, Bristol. I hope you enjoy our exclusive webinar.
Thanks for that, Niyati, and it's such a great moment to be coming in to your home. I feel really privileged today to be actually talking to you from my home into yours, and who would have imagined we'd be doing that? But these are special times, as Niyati said, and I think it's great that MSM have today put on this webinar so that we can connect. So far, 172 of you and a few of us, because we have a great team here in India and Nepal. You've met Niyati already, but actually our team of Ranjita and Jansi and Anish and Mukesh are all here really wanting to serve and work with you as we hopefully make a difference to young people's lives. So let's move on and get into the actual webinar itself. Loads of things to cover. I hope we're going to have a really interesting hour. Lots of time for questions at the end. And so hopefully we'll be able to give you all the answers that you need to hear. But moving on to our third slide, we'll go through the second one because that's a picture of me and you can see me already. So you don't need to worry about that. Actually, I look very old in that one. We'll move on to that. But the UWE cares and will make a difference. And I think that's a really important heading to have. I don't know if you remember the first slide that you saw, but there was a ship there. That was the Great Britain, which was the first powered ship, steamship with sail to actually be able to go out into the high seas. And it made me think about the current situation we're in. And if you think about it, it's not the water around a ship that actually makes it sink. It's when water gets into the ship that it goes down. And I think in these times, we have to really be confident in our ship. We have to be confident about what we're doing. And I'd like to share with you just a little bit about thinking around COVID-19, the current situation and the future. The first thing I want to say is how proud I've been of our students, including those from India and Nepal. 800 of them have remained on campus, and all of our students, yes, 27,000 of them have been engaged through online learning for some time now. But you can imagine it was a very difficult position for them a few weeks ago when the university had to close. Nevertheless, learning carries on, and that's the message today. Learning will always carry on, whatever the situation. And so I'm so pleased that UWE is making sure that all of those students who've gone through this challenging year will have a year that they remember, a year in which they graduate and a year in which they can celebrate their successes in the future. The university has provided amazing support to the healthcare system in the UK. This includes setting up a hospital on the edge of the campus, completely isolated from all of the students and from everyone else at the campus. But it is really fantastic that there are beds there for 450 people. hopefully saving lives. And then we've been thinking about the future. And we're going to tell you a bit later on about our UWE placement test, which is an online test that students can take so we can forget about IELTS and all the other English tests that are needed. We can do a UWE placement test online with your students to help them get to the UK. If they need help, there's also going to be an online pre-session English course. And that's going to be, I think, a fantastic opportunity. Live teaching every day, 36 hours of teaching a week, including help and support in developing business studies modules. So I think that's going to be something very special. Thinking around final transcripts, I know lots of you will be concerned about students having examinations that are postponed. There'll be worries about will they get results. Let's put those worries to bed now, because we're determined to be as flexible as possible, looking at provisional transcripts, looking at what we can actually decide on in terms of students' achievement, because at the end of the day, we do want to make a difference, don't we? All of us want those students to be able to travel as soon as they can. We are looking at when should we start in the autumn. You know, in your country, as in the UK is quite a way on now with many, many cases of COVID-19. And that problem is obviously spreading globally. But just thinking about the autumn, when can we start? Is it going to be September? Is it going to be October? Is it going to be November, December, or even January? What I can say to you today is we will be able to make a start at some point in that term. We will provide preparatory work online to help students. That's going to be important. But I think the most important thing is say to the students now, the future is really important today. It's really important to start planning for your future now. We can be flexible. We can actually help you. If it means deferring, if it means starting later, and please don't worry about those things around money. If it means a student even having a full refund of any money they pay, that will be fine. And later on, I'll be sharing with you some key dates. Of course, we'll talk a bit more later on about scholarships and about accommodation, because those things are important. Flexibility. This is about helping people. This is about really making sure that our students feel welcome. So that is the key today. But let's move on to the next slide and have a look at one of the beautiful images that I think will greet students when they go to Bristol. This is the bridge built by Brunel and designed. He actually had to make 6 attempts because the money kept running out. So talking about that ship at the beginning, he certainly didn't worry about the water coming in. He kept going, and he's given us a bridge now, which is hundreds of years ago. I've got a great story about the bridge, but I'm not going to tell you today. It's the story you can hear on another occasion when we connect. But that really is a genuine picture. But let's really look at Bristol and give you just a 30-second snip of what the place is like. So there we go, just a view of Bristol. There were a few, oh, we nearly played it again for you. We enjoyed it that much. There was nearly, if you looked at that, a few people in the pictures, but if you had pictures today, I don't think you'd see anybody out in the streets. But UWE, of course, located in a city, a fantastic city, a vibrant city with over 50,000 students and a population of 450,000. And we have 3 great campuses on that city. So let's just have a look at the maps that shows those. 3 campuses. The first one, which will come up when we press the button now, hopefully, a ring. I feel very proud of this PowerPoint, but I can honestly tell you I didn't do it, but it still looks pretty impressive to me. But the art and design students who are based in Bower Ashton, that is a gorgeous place. It's got a deer park outside. It's really in a country park with state-of-the-art facilities, new film studios, new illustration workshops, really beautiful. The second campus is for our students in health. That's up in Glenside. That was originally a hospital and today is still being worked on in terms of being a place where we train our nurses, our opticians, our physiotherapists, a fantastic campus. And then of course the French A campus, which is our main campus, where most of the accommodation blocks are situated. And I put an arrow there, which was an arrow, I don't know, to that balloon it looks like. So perhaps it's just showing that it's a campus that we can fly in. I don't know. Let's move on to the next slide. Four faculties in which all of the subjects are concentrated. And these subjects, I think, have got something that is pretty unique, pretty important for you to really consider. Like a lot of universities, we're concerned about the employability of our students. And that's why all of our 500 courses, yes, 500 courses, actually have industry and commercial accreditation validation. There is no point in students coming to the UK to have an international experience and then doing courses that don't lead them to potential employment and potential jobs. And of course, the important thing is to remember that with the post-study work visa, there is the opportunity to work in the UK from 2021 for 2 years and enjoy, perhaps, putting into practice a lot of the things that you learned on your degree. Moving on. So let's have a think about the first area, the arts and creative industries faculties, also where education is based. A number of subjects there, and I think the next click will just show you one or two of those subjects that are really popular in India and in Nepal: graphic design and animation and interior design. Now these particular courses, animation is linked to an actual animation studio. So the students themselves get that real hands-on experience of Wallace and Gromit is the actual studio. Graphic design is actually built in a graphic design and a huge art gallery. So again, a real working context, not just some university building. And interior design, they will actually work on projects all of the time to actually be designing interior and again, working alongside industry. But those courses really popular in India and Nepal. And moving on, just some images from our gallery. This is the gallery where the graphic art design building is based. And we've got another picture for you. There we go. I'm absolutely hopeless. I don't know about you. I've just been doing a little bit of do-it-yourself around the house, and I was doing a bit of painting, and there seems to be more paint on the floor than there is on the wall. So I don't think I could do any of this kind of artwork, but there we go. So let's go on to the next group of subjects. The Faculty of Environment and Technology, of course, really key subjects, I think, again, in India and Nepal, things that are very popular. Architecture, 6th in the UK for architecture and planning courses, massively oversubscribed. If people want to get involved on those courses, it's really important that they sign up today. Remember what I keep saying, today matters tomorrow, so we can't wait, we have to go forward now. Construction courses, particularly around construction project management. At the moment, the most popular subject chosen from students in India for next year. That was a bit of a surprise for me, but that's how it is. Civil engineering, computer science, which includes aspects of artificial intelligence, alongside the robotics courses, and of course, things like aeronautical engineers. And I was talking to a student actually from Sri Lanka just the other day, who hopes to follow through on becoming a pilot. He's done some work already, done some flying hours, and he's going to build on those whilst at the university. And don't forget the last box there, the opportunity to be a project manager, to be an engineering manager. That's really key. This is about people who in the future will come back home and I hope be leaders of other people. We move on to the next slide. I think this is a good show of some of the robotics work that goes on at UWE. And so just a little video to show you some feeling about what we do in robotics. photos, and I feel really proud of actually what the students are achieving, because just thinking about the crisis as it is at the moment, how important it's been to have robotics in the health industry to actually help our health workers. Engineering courses, a whole range of them on offer there. I don't need to read them out, but just to give you a flavour again, that we really are a strong engineering university. In fact, the university began as an engineering university and has a history that goes back to maritime days in the 1600s. So a very long history behind it. On to the next slide. We mentioned architecture already. Quite fantastic in terms of seeing the architecture around the world. Things like the airport in Bangkok actually had architecture students from the university building that and designing that airport. So buildings all over the world that have been from UWE graduates, and really good links with some of the best architectural schools across the world. The M-Arch architecture, really popular in India. I think the portfolio is important, so do ask the team about getting our portfolio advice if people want to go for architecture courses. Let's go to the next slide. And of course, computer science, creative technology, again, a full range there of courses popular here, but I want to just reflect a little bit on the new developing courses in audio and music technology as well, because they are becoming so important. And one course that is not mentioned here, but I think is very key in India and Nepal, is cybersecurity. There was a report just recently in India about the massive need for cybersecurity experts. So why not come to UWE, become that expert, come back to India and Nepal, and really have a fantastic career. We go to the next slide. Of course, health and applied science. This was always our smallest faculty, but I think now our most important faculty, given the time that it is, because it's our trained nurses, our trained people who work in hospital, who actually now, of course, are playing the role that we all are valuing across the world. A whole range of health courses in nursing, the opportunity to do an adult nursing program, the opportunity to become a midwife, the opportunity to become a radiographer. You can't train to be a doctor though at UWE Bristol. We cover all the other health subjects, but not pharmacy and not being a doctor. But important that this faculty, I think, is really considered by your students. Let's go to the next slide. Just a quick look at the laboratories, just to give you a feel of the laboratories. The university has spent £350 million in the last 3 years on developing its facilities. So that's a significant spend on making the place somewhere that's really welcoming and a great place for students to be. And the next slide. Just giving you an idea, this is fantastic at the moment. I've actually trained in this room where you go and you have the robotic patients. And I was actually talking to the other students that were in the room, and suddenly the robot spoke to me and said, if you don't mind, I'm in bed here, would you mind talking to me? And I just think that was really good. It just reminded me what we were there about. It was all about being for the patient. So really practical experience, real training for real jobs. Lots of subjects there, again, highly popular. A lot of people, particularly again from Nepal and the south of India, seem to be looking very much at some of those nursing programs. Let's move to the next slide. Faculty of Business and Law. I'm nearly at the end of talking about all the subjects. I don't think I need to talk about all of these subjects here because they're well known to all of you. And it's still no surprise that these subjects are the most popular for students. The MBA, the International Business Management, all of those programs are really programs that have significant numbers of students from India and Nepal, as well as all countries. One of the things I like about all the business programs is that the students get an opportunity to do one of two things. They can either work with a company in solving a real life problem, or otherwise they can work with people who have a business issue that they want support and help with. It might be somebody with a financial issue that they want help with, and we give pro bono work as students to help people with their financial issues or to help business grow and develop. And I think going ahead into the next year, what better skills for students to learn than being able to help others redevelop and build their business. And here's the trading room, very significant, of course, I think particularly recently, seeing the crash in all of the stock market, but I'm sure we're going to see that revive again. We can track everything live in that studio. On to the next shot. Let's take a quick look at the business school. Yeah, the business school, a tremendous facility. Now, some students, of course, want advanced entry. These are students who may have followed a program such as an HND, or they may have followed a program of a number of years on an Indian degree or a Nepal degree program, and they've built up enough credits to be able to go to our final year. Now, if they do this, we call them top-up awards. It basically means that they get, at the end of 1 year course, that means they get their full business degree. Again, very popular, and here's the whole range of subjects. I think we put some circles around the ones that particularly are popular in India, but I'm not sure that will work. Oh no, it didn't work. So we'll move on to the next one, because the next slide shows us the other subjects other than business that actually are available. So that graphic design and illustration and interior design and animation, the things that I told you were very popular, all are available if students have got previous history, previous work from a degree program, and they just want to top up. And so there's lots of students fall into that category. And I guess the best advice is to ask our team so we can support them with you on a one-to-one basis. It's very difficult here to give you global information about all the things that are required, but we're very flexible. We really will help, I think, people get these places. Moving on to the next slide. Well, of course, where we live is pretty important, isn't it? Accommodation at French A, 4,600 beds on the campus there. And here are some pictures of the options that are there. Students can stay in accommodation that is just ensuite single rooms. They can share rooms if they want to have a room with one other person, or indeed they can have a non-ensuite rooms, and that means the prices are different. The contracts run throughout the year. Now, this is a key bit of information because we obviously don't know when the students are going to start next year, but they may want to apply and book their accommodation. Accommodation for booking opens on the 1st of May, so just 2 weeks' time. And so what's really important is get all of your applicants to apply for accommodation. There's no fee to pay. There's no problem if they decide to withdraw later on, but it just means they've got a guaranteed room, either at French A or, as we'll see on the next slide. Let's go to the next slide. The other accommodation we have in the city. So these are all university accommodation facilities that are available. And as you can see, all modern, very much state-of-the-art type facilities. They've got all Wi-Fi connectivity, they're all heated. Actually, I think we spoil our students, but lots of choices. But 1st of May, let's get those bookings in. I don't want to see any student from Nepal or India not actually getting a place in accommodation because they didn't book. You do have to have your offer though. Doesn't matter if it's conditional or if it's unconditional, you must have an offer before you can book accommodation. On to the next slide. So let's have a look at the timeline as it stands, because I noticed lots of people are popping up with questions about this. Well, we've already passed February, but where are we now? Well, over the next couple of months, we very much hope people will continue to apply as they've done in the past, and keep saying to people, don't worry, apply now. If later you decide to defer, or if later we have to tell you that you can't start till January, better to have your place than not. So I think up until about June, it's a good time to actually be applying. And of course, we know in India and Nepal, many students also apply in July and August. That's fine. Let's keep things as normal as possible. We'll actually be doing the UKVI TB test. They have to be done, of course, you know that already. That will start in July because we don't believe this year that until about July, we will be starting issuing CASs. That's much later than normal because of the current situation. And therefore, there's no panic about students paying their deposits and making sure that their bank evidence is in order. They've got time to be thinking about that over the next couple of months. And I know it's difficult at the moment for students to actually even get to banks and to actually be talking about possible loans and possible ways in which the banks will help them. So plenty of time to leave this until later. But if any student does pay that £3,000 deposit, I give you again the guarantee that if they have to withdraw, that money will be returned in full to them. Equally, they can always move it on and defer it to a later start if they want to. So that's really important. Going to the autumn, we hope to have the main intake for the main courses, but I have said the autumn, the date is yet to be firmly decided. But of course, many of the students may have done our online PSE programme. That will be starting in July, running, as I say, 36 hours a week for 6 days of the week. And those students will have live teaching for 2 or 3 hours a day, like I'm doing here, actually over Zoom. After that, they'll be giving assignments and work to do to bring back to the teacher the following day so they can build on their language skills. And Saturdays are going to be dedicated to academic writing and to business studies and to actually learning about project management and those really important subject areas. If the students have to do even longer than the 6 weeks, because the 6 weeks will cost £1,000, but of that £1,000, agents, £400 will be coming as commission to you. So it's a little bit of way of saying thank you to you because of this difficult year. Let's get students onto the PSE programme. We're not actually aiming to, of course, make any money from this. That's not the aim. We're paying for the teacher, but we do feel you're supporting us. So £400 for every student on that PSE programme will come back to you. The team can give you all the full details. If at the end of the 6 weeks, the students still need further help, we're going to continue for up to another 4 weeks, no charge at all for those students. They'll just carry on being supported until they've reached the UWE English level to be able to go and do their degree. So as I say, there's no panic about IELTS, TOEFL, or you will have heard about all those other online provision that's there at the moment, all of which are very expensive for the student. Our tests are free. Yes, the PSE, I'm afraid there is a charge. It's £1,000 to pay for the teacher and the other expenses. But at the end of the day, I don't think they'll be able to do any better than that. And it will get them a place in the UK if they want it. So by January, we believe every course will be up and running. You've got to have hope about the future, and we're pretty confident that that will be the position. However, the plan is to try and finish the year in as much an academic year as possible. So if courses are delayed in terms of starting, we will be reflecting that in the student fee, and we will be reflecting that in the accommodation cost. So if we say to a student, well, actually, you'll only come to us in January and you'll leave us in June, obviously we're not expecting them to pay for a whole 12 months of study. Of course, at the end of that period, whatever time they come to us, they will get their full degree, and then they will be able to go on and do their post-study work experience by applying for that visa. We can do more questions at the end if you have questions around those things, but let's go on to the next slide. So the entry requirements. For Nepal, there's always some flexibility around this. We are saying the general rule is around 60% for that undergraduate entry. For foundation and international year one, that is actually run by UWE, our international college, which is a Kaplan provision. And so Kaplan, and that's located in Delhi, the office, actually manage anybody who needs that foundation program. But for undergraduate, 60% more or less in the 12th grade is what's needed. And for going on to masters, 55 to 65% depends a little bit about where your undergraduate degree came from. But Mukesh will certainly support you in getting through all of that kind of complicated area to help students get through. And remember what I've said, this year we're going to try and be as flexible as possible in terms of what we recognise, because we know some students are going to be waiting for their results when they need to apply for their visa. And going to the slide for India, well, India is always a bit more complicated with all the different school boards and you know, all the different situations there, but just a broad picture of what's expected again in terms of percentages. And of course, Niyati, Ranjita, Jansi and Anish are there, and wherever you're located, they're your team that are going to support you in terms of making sure the students have the right qualifications. But the same thing applies. Don't worry about the delays, because at the end of the day, our job is to recognise that the students this year have achieved in really difficult circumstances. So let's recognise that together. Going on to the next slide. The English requirements. Well, the English requirement, really, these are the ones across the main providers, the main CELTs. But I've already mentioned for UWE, the UWE placement test, I think, is probably the best way to go at the moment, because who knows when IELTS centres, etc. will open again. The only downside of taking a UE placement test is, of course, it can only be used at UWE. But the test has the same components as IELTS, as I said, fully online. And just giving you a bit of a background, so far, just over 500 students have taken that test, and the pass rate has been 82.5%. So 82.5% are already in a position to switch their offer to unconditional, and the others are going to move on to our 6-week pre-sessional, but a very good success rate. The tests will happen every Wednesday. So every Wednesday, there'll be an opportunity to actually take an online test, and with over 200 combinations of the test, there's no problem if the student tries it once and then in a couple of weeks later, after a bit of perhaps practice online, they think, I'd like to have another go. No problem whatsoever. It's absolutely free, and we're committed to trying and helping the students get to their English requirements. I won't want them to do a test every week, of course, because really they need to do a little bit of work if they didn't do well on the first test to see if they can improve. Don't forget that pre-sessional English program is available at the end. And last year's pre-sessional English programs had a 99% success rate in students going to UWE. So I think we know what we're doing when it comes to that. Let's go to the next slide. Well, the fees. These are the fees as they are at the moment. We know that the UK is not a particularly cheap destination to go to, but equally, it's not as expensive as perhaps places like Australia or the United States. There are, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment, about some scholarships that are available, but let's just say these fees at the moment are the ones assuming the students are able to do the full year. But remember, if we do have to be more flexible on that, these costs will come down. £3,000 is the initial fee that has to be paid, the deposit, before we will issue a CAS. And then this year, we're going to actually have a scheme whereby there are instalment opportunities for students, and they will be able to have either 3 or 6 instalments. It will be their choice of when they pay, and so they'll be able to do that, but I'm afraid they won't be able to build up debts. They will have to meet each of those 3 or 6 payments to continue and to be able to graduate, and equally to be able to apply for a post-study work visa, because the university will be actually supporting them in that visa, and clearly anybody who doesn't pay their fees can't expect to have support. But I think it's a key message now to be saying that fee level may come down, but more important than that, this year, 3,000 at the beginning, but then either 3 or 6 equal instalments, no interest charges or anything like that, that are available for people. There are the accommodation costs, gives you some sort of idea as well. Let's move on. So the scholarships. Well, the first thing is the university offers about £500,000 in scholarships. And I think we'll go through all the screen. Let's have a look at all the scholarships that are available. Now, these scholarships, what you don't have to do is physically apply for them, with the exception of the sports scholarship. That's for really talented sports people, perhaps somebody who's representing the nation or representing a region within the nation who actually wants to get into one of UWE's sports teams. So in those particular cases, we will ask the student to make themselves known to our team in India and Nepal, and the team will help you with that scholarship. All the other scholarships that come up are based on performance. And so what we do is we wait for the applications to come in, and then we invite students who've reached the required performance to actually then write a letter to say they will want a scholarship. So it saves a lot of wasted time for you and for students in applying for something that's not available to them. So I want to go to the bottom line, and that is that £80,000 currently, and I'm actually asking for that to be more, currently £80,000 are available for India and Nepal. And I think what we're going to do in these difficult times is try and work with you in discounting, if you like, as many students as we can in terms of the fee in which they overall pay. But I'm afraid 80,000, that's not going to go to all the applicants that we've got. So I think it's really going to have to be you and us working together and deciding on where a student needs particular help to actually make them and encourage them to come to the university. So that's going to be another one where we're going to have, I think, lots more conversations between the team and yourselves in weeks to come. And if we go on from the scholarships, this is a key slide. I guess everybody can give any kind of figure, but this is 94% of our students being in employment or further study within 6 months of graduating. Now, that's in the UK. Internationally, that figure is 97%. 97%. And I think that is a pretty tremendous performance. And that's not your performance or my performance or even the lecturer's performance. That's our young people, our international students, using what they've gained at the university to get employment. And I'm just delighted that that figure is so high. I think one of the reasons, moving on to the next slide, is that we have this award-winning careers site. This is the particular site for India. And so this means that students globally, once they've graduated with, or any student, they can actually apply for posts that are put up online here in Gradling, India. So at the moment, I have to tell you, there are not so many posts. I suppose that's for obvious reasons. But normally you would go in there and they'd be able to find lots of jobs, particularly in multinational companies. And so that's really good. So Gradling, India, which also covers Nepal, and there are ones for the whole of the world, but online. And our commitment really to the student is that for 3 years after they've left the university, they can still get careers advice from our specialists in the UK at the university. And I think the next slide just shows the spread of Gradling. Oh, I cut that slide, so it obviously doesn't, because we've come to the thank you and the questions and answers. But before I let you get into that, I just want to think of a quick story. I love telling stories. And so just a quick story of thinking about all the things we've said, because I started the presentation talking about the water and the ship, and the fact that, it's the water getting inside the ship that makes it sink. Well, at this time, I'm reminded of a story of the young boy who saw the cocoon of a butterfly just coming out. He was just forcing his way out of the cocoon. And the boy, thinking he was helpful, actually opened up the cocoon and let the butterfly came out. And of course, this was not a good thing to do, because the butterfly hadn't been able to absorb all the food and nutrition from inside of the cocoon to make its wings strong. And for the rest of its life, it really was a bit of a sad butterfly. And the reason for this story is that I think the important thing is that we may at this particular time feel that our students are feeling cocooned, that they're feeling that they're having to stay a little bit at home for a bit longer. I think the key is that that cocoon is going to naturally open. Nature is going to take its course. And in the next few months, with your help, and I hope with our help, those students will be able to get to their dreams. They will be able to grow ever stronger because of what's happened now. and they will be able to achieve what they want to achieve. Our job is to help you in your work. And can I, on behalf of the university, just thank you now for everything that you do, because you do make a tremendous difference. And I know so often we talk about the fact that we're in a business, and of course, agents, we know that everybody has to make a living. But at the same time, you do make a difference to people's lives. And I do want to thank you for that, because that is not insignificant work. And especially at these troubled times where you're probably working from home as well, and it's even more challenging, then let's help each other. You help the student, we will try and help the student too, and in so doing, we help each other. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm going to hand over to Nyati now, because I'm sure I can see so many questions coming up, Nyati, so we better get onto those for the last 20 minutes.
Thank you, Ray. I hope everyone has enjoyed this session, and such an interesting session. So we have a few questions, Ray. There's one question which says, have you considered starting online due to COVID-19? Do you know when the PSW is going to be ratified by Parliament?
Right, okay, two good questions. The online, we're at the moment saying we will definitely be doing preparatory work online, because there is no doubt the term date will not be starting in September. It will be October or November. However, what we've said we would rather do is try and get the students as quickly as possible to the UK, even if that is November or December or January, and if you like, compress the teaching. So it does mean they'll spend more hours in class than they normally would do, but we feel our courses are so kind of industry standard, they're so much about hands-on experience, that as much as we can do a lot of the theory online, the reality is there's nothing like experiencing it. So yes, we will do some online work, but we're not going to run an online year, because I think, to be honest, we would rather say to students, defer for a year and have the real proper experience than have another year of online study. That's just our view.
All right.
You're asking another question. I forgot what the other question was now.
Well, yes, there's another question. I believe you have answered this question, but I would still go through it. When are you planning to start September intake? Same or might get delayed? If delayed, when can we expect the CAS letter?
Right, I think there's no doubt about it. It will be delayed. I think that's absolutely sure. We're at the moment working on issuing CASs from sometime in June, but obviously we can only issue a CAS 3 months before the students are due to go to the UK. For online learning, you don't have to issue a CAS. So therefore, the CAS issuing will be 3 months from whenever the start is. So if it's October, if you're working back from that, then it's obviously going to be July before we issue the CAS. And this is why I think we can be very relaxed about deposits and about things like that, because students, it gives time, and it gives time for, I hope, this virus to start showing that it's on the decline.
So we can rightly say we're looking at probably starting from October end. Is that correct?
We're looking at October at the moment, but to be honest, who knows? Next week, we could hold this and I might say, no, it's November now.
All right, thank you so much. The other question that we have is, are we accepting Duolingo language test for students who cannot opt IELTS exam currently?
The Duolingo at the moment is not accepted by the university, although we are every week looking at various programs that are on offer. But the reason we're tending not to accept the other programs, the other online courses, is because our placement test is there every Wednesday. It's online. The students just do it at home. They are invigilated. They have to join into a Zoom invigilation session whilst they're doing the test. But it means they can obviously every week have an opportunity free of charge. There's no charge for that, to make sure that they can qualify to go to the university. But we are changing every week, and new courses being accepted as UKVI, the UK visa authorities, say, yes, we will consider that course. The UWE online test, by the way, is accepted by the UK visa authorities for actually students going to the UK. So there's no problem with that.
All right. I think these are the questions. There are some other common questions about entry-level requirement. I believe you have given them the information, so those questions have been answered. There's another question about, does the university need work experience for admission in MBA program?
For the MBA,
That's
it
correct.
does actually. The MBA program is not what I call a freshers MBA, where they join straight from a bachelor's degree. There is a requirement for 2 years work experience, although there's a little bit of flexibility about that. If somebody's got, 18 months or 15 months of a really good work experience, we do apply flexibility. That word flexibility, I think, is pretty key to everything that we do, because every application is really looked at by Jancy in our South Asia office. It then goes to our office in Malaysia. And every morning at breakfast time, I tend to look at about 20 applications a day from India and Nepal. And I go through and think, well, how does this feel? Does this feel like a really serious student? And I guess what I'd be saying to agents is not only get a good technical application together, but I love reading what the students have to say. If there's some passion in what the students say in their application, that really does help when they make a personal statement, particularly for something like the MBA, where they might be saying, I've only got a year's experience, but look at what I've learned in this year.
All right. I think the agents are sending in a lot of questions. Some of them have already been answered, and Ray has answered a lot of them. I think we can go with one last question now.
Okay.
Here the question is, can a student take an online English test while enrolling for nursing program?
No, this is a difficult one, because nursing, I should have said this, nursing is actually an area where they do have to have a recognised CELT, because at the end of the day, the idea is, of course, the student will be able to become a nurse if they wish. They'll become a qualified nurse, so they could stay in the UK, for instance, and work permanently as a nurse there. So there is an IELTS requirement, a minimum standard for nursing. And the only other course that I'm trying to think, I'm racking my brain now, you've really tested me. I think that journalism was in that similar position, but we're just about changing that. And there used to be the bar training course for people who wanted to be a barrister, but we've also changed that now we can accept the UWE placement test. But nursing, because it's actually managed by the Nursing Council, we have no control over that. And so they do require an IELTS score, and it's a high IELTS, it's 6.5 minimum.
All right. Can we look at one more question, Ray?
Yes, we've got a few more minutes. We've got a few more minutes. It's great. As long as everyone's fine hanging on there and not everybody wants to go and get a cup of tea or something.
So another question is, do we accept gaps?
Oh, the study gap.
That's correct.
Yeah, we do. We do accept a study gap. I think the biggest issue around study gaps tends to be around English. Because, if somebody comes to us for a postgraduate course and they did their undergraduate course, say, 10 years ago, we would be saying to them, can you do our placement test? Because I think, a score in English that you did 10 years ago, and how do we know if you've used English ever since then? So we will ask people to do a placement test on that occasion. Now, those people who don't do our placement tests, we will also ask them to do what we call a credibility interview. And so that's where one of our team, we have a team based here in Asia, will actually call them up and actually just ask them a few questions about the university in Bristol. But of course, if they've done the placement test, the speaking test of the placement test covers that. So only other unconditional offer holders get that phone call. And so far, we haven't had anybody who hasn't done really well on the credibility. So nobody's been turned down on the credibility. It's just been actually a friendly conversation, and generally a bit like this. It's been a case of answering students' questions and having a question and answer session. So it's been really nice getting to know people as individuals.
Well, I believe we have answered a lot of questions, and We hope the webinar was informative. We will be conducting another webinar tomorrow as well in the evening. So I would now like to thank all the education agents for participating with us in this exclusive series of webinar hosted by University of West of England and MSM. In case your answers are not addressed during the session, or if you have missed anything, we will be sending you all the details post this session. Till then, take care and stay safe.
Thank you.